This is a semi-detached house which is not on the 1922 OS map, but it is on the 1936 OS map. So let's just say it's 1930 for argument's sake, and it was built for the local authority, so it's a council house. It has brick-faced cavity walls. It's in good structural condition. It's a little gem in many respects, but it requires comprehensive refurbishment. It has been re-roofed, so the house next door, you can just about make out that those are clay double Roman tiles, whereas these are some form of concrete tile, but matching quite nicely. It has brick-faced cavity walls, free from any significant structural movement, but with a few little problems. It's a bit damp internally, which it shouldn't be really, as it has cavity walls, but there are a number of contributing factors. Firstly, if we go up nice and close, we can see little pointed in drill holes in the wall, which indicate it's got cavity wall insulation, which is a good idea 95% of the time, but the walls need to be kept in very good condition to stop penetrating dampness. Here you can see that there are a few mortar joints missing, so rainwater will be getting through the outer skin of the cavity wall there again, and depending on what the cavity wall insulation is, it might be acting as a conduit to drag moisture through. It has a damp-proof course, and I think that damp-proof course in this part of the front elevation is just beneath those air vents, which have been covered up to stop, I don't know, mice getting in perhaps. But the damp-proof course is at about ground level, so there'll be lateral penetrating dampness. Any rubbish that's in the bottom of the wall cavity will help that across the cavity rather, and yeah, once again the cavity fill could be acting as a conduit. There is that damp-proof course in the side elevation, at which point it's 1 brick above ground level, when I've no doubt it was 2 bricks above ground level when the house was first built. This is the rear right corner of the house, and there's a cement skirt which has probably got something to do with encouraging rainwater that goes down that downpipe to go into the gully, but it's a misplaced rainwater pipe really, isn't it? Anyway, breaking up cement render like that's going to also encourage dampness to go behind the render and through the wall, so that needs knocking off and perhaps not renewing. There is the back of the house, all fairly straightforward. And here at the back of the house, the damp-proof course, I think, is in there somewhere, which if you follow that along, it's well and truly below ground level. So there will be a problem, and that's the neighbour's extension. There's a valley just above there, so there'll be an awful lot of water coming off their roof. The gutters are full of, let's go in a bit closer. The gutters are full of grass, so they'll be spilling rainwater onto that part of the wall, which will also be encouraging a damp penetration problem. And this is the living room, so we've got floors going from side to side. That's the back of the house, there's the front of the house, and you can see the line of nails down the middle, which shows you where the floor joists are going. So we've got floor joists sitting on the internal skin of a cavity wall, which has potentially got dampness problems. So first of all, we can do a so-called bounce test. Let's go and find a floor joist end. This is me bouncing. I'm not the biggest, fattest, heaviest surveyor in the world, but all seems to be very stable. However, if you get a close look at those carpet grips, what is obvious is that the little nails fixing them down and gripping the carpet are very rusty, so that can only happen with moisture. And over there's a lot of dusty stuff underneath them, which will be resulting from either active woodworm infestation or possibly some form of timber decay, and quite often both. Here there's quite clearly a woodworm infestation, And if the woodworm is affecting the carpet grip above the floor, then it's very probably having a pop at the floor joists and the undersides of the floorboards. I mean, that, for example, is slowly turning into mush, isn't it? So this is a damp meter, which was, what was it doing? Messing me around last time, wasn't it? But the wall here is complaining a little bit of dampness. So yes, there's evidence there of a bit of moisture in the wall and evidently in the carpet grip and presumably therefore the subfloor void. So what are you going to do about it? Well, lower ground level, so it's a good 2 brick courses beneath the damp proof course, so that can work. Repoint where required. Make sure the gutters and downpipes aren't spilling rainwater onto the walls. And that is probably all you can do, except replaster. So you will need to replaster because if you look at this, it's quite amusing. So you've got wallpaper, quite clearly old wallpaper, on a plaster wall, and if you choose to take that off, and I suspect most people will want to, and that is, I don't know whether you can see that, can you see that? It's super spongy, so when that wallpaper comes off the wall, I don't know, maybe it's come off once already. Whatever's behind it's coming off too. So an opportunity to perhaps put an insulated dry lining around the house to soup it all up a bit. There's quite a lot of dampness in this internal partition, so why would that be? Well, I suppose possibly the builder, bearing in mind we're going back to the 20s, 30s, might not have put a damp proof course in the internal walls. This is a concrete floor here. I mean, the timber floors out there, you can just see it through the living room door. This floor is concrete, so if there's some kind of damp proof membrane in this floor, which is probably just the sort of adhesive used to stick the tiles down, if that's prevented moisture getting out through the floor, it's going to be forced to the edges of the floor, hence the walls. So there might be a sort of double dose of dampness going in there. So that's going to be a little bit more tricky to remedy. This is an old-fashioned larder off the kitchen, and we can see little piles of dust sitting on the skirting board. Well, that's a live and kicking woodworm infestation, and lots of condensation mould to go with it. So I think again another example of how an insulated dry lining would help in this house. We've got a very simple roof frame, so there are rafters nailed to a roof ridge, and down the bottom there you can see a purlin which they are presumably nailed to, and if we lifted all this insulation, well, to an extent you can see it there, there are ceiling joists spanning from side to side tying the rafter feet together, and there's down the middle a ceiling joist binder. What you will probably also have noted is the roof space is dotted with rat poo, and there's a hell of a lot of it as well. So this place has been enjoyed by a rat population for some time. There is a modern air permeable underlay, and it is stretched very tightly over the rafters. I think there's an argument for fitting it relatively loosely or moderately loosely to allow a certain amount of breeze to blow up and down between the sheets of underlay. So it could potentially have been fitted better. And up there's a little hole or two in it already. Whether that's damage done by the roofers or some sort of deterioration, I don't know. And that's one of 3 hangers fixing the roof ridge down to the ceilings. And in amongst all that poo, you might possibly be able to pick out a few holes left by woodworm. We know that the house has been re-roofed, and this is probably why. There's a fairly significant staining on the bedroom ceiling. And the damp meter is registering 8.3% moisture, so it's been fixed by the re-roofing project, hasn't it? Plaster finishes throughout the house are quite hollow and puffy, so I don't think it's very well attached to the wall anywhere. I mean, the actual skims coming off there, and where there's wallpaper, a lovely floral wallpaper over here for example, you can imagine if this gets pulled off the wall, a lot of plaster is going to come away with it. I mean, that sounded quite firm there. Don't know what that is. So plaster's already come off the wall and they put nailed some board over the top of it. That discoloration, I don't know for a fact what it is. I have a suspicion though it's an example of what do you call it, wallpaper paste deteriorating. I think it's just what happens with old wallpaper paste, and they're a bit of a so-called informal extension to the electrical system. There's a vertical fracture in the wall there. This is where the front part of the house projects. So we're standing in a little forward projection, and behind that crack the wall recedes. I think that's the internal skin of a cavity wall up into where that crack is located, and then the wall continues that way as an internal partition only. So I guess maybe there's some wall ties causing a bit of a tension inside. To tell the truth, I don't know what's happening there, but it's not affecting the outside wall, and it's only minor fracturing inside, so I think we can probably dismiss that as a minor problem. This is the kitchen ceiling, not lath and plaster, but something else. So we've got these straight line joints, which suggests it might be plasterboard, but if it is, you can see the nails holding in place, and it hasn't been skimmed, has it? I think that's the problem. But also it might be something else, and when there's something else involved, you always have to just think about the possibility that these are asbestos boards. Drainage at this property is a little bit complicated, and there's the road over there in front of the house, quite a long way off. And we have an inspection chamber here, where the drains from both houses run to, and then it goes off in that way towards the rear of the property. There is that peculiar elevated gully just there, possibly added to fix a problem. I think possibly that irregular shaped hole there might have been chewed through by rats. Got this, I don't know what to make of this. There's a drain running across the back of the chamber, then the front part of the chamber is full of earth. If you go back here, you can see, can you, the top of a drain pipe entering the chamber, but it's all blocked up with earth. So is this, 100 years of ants excavating? Is it rats? I can't see any evidence of rat poo, but the tops of the chambers look like they're loosening and the chamber covers rusting. So anyway, there's enough going on there, especially considering that most of the underground drainage is hidden from view and out of sight, so I think we need to instruct a firm of drainage engineers to go and have a better look. The electric installation's been modernised. I mean, we've got two relatively modern consumer units with labels on them reporting that they have been inspected in 2021 and should be inspected again in 2023, does that say? He's not trusting himself, is he, that electrician? However, roundabout, there are lots of things like this, which I suppose, well, I've heard them described as informal extensions. So it seems to me it probably needs rewiring. Outside there is a rusty old oil tank, but here we've got a couple of big fat pipes poking out of the fireplace and some boxing up the edge of the chimney breast. So there will have been a back boiler in here once upon a time, I think. So that's been taken out, the oil's not used, and there are night storage heaters of various ages, some of which are rather clumsily located. This is what the bathroom suite looks like. So, I mean, that sort of colour is what? End of the 1980s, is it? Replaced toilet seat. It does have mechanical ventilation, so it's not all bad. And there's an electric fan heater, which is probably not ideal. This is what the kitchen looks like, so it's probably time for a new kitchen. Oh, you don't need to see under there, it's falling apart. There's one radiator on the wall, the only radiator in the house, and the only thing that could possibly be sourced from is the hot water cylinder upstairs. The plumbing under the kitchen sink appears to be at least a little bit archaic. That looks like cast iron plumbing. There's a battery on the end of my torch, so I said battery, I meant magnet. There you go. It is cast iron. So it needs replumbing probably, this place, apart from everything else.